Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a special Saturday night edition of Behind the Wall. This is Brock from lastcar.info, easy for me to say. Coming at you for the conclusion of William Byron getting his second win of the season and taking an early lead in the championship standings, as well as BJ McLeod getting his first last place finish since 2020 in a race that was just about as uncontested at the back of the field as it was at the front of the field here. We'll certainly talk about all the action from this race, as well as the Xfinity and Truck Series races from this weekend. A little bit of a hot and cold weekend in terms of the action, depending on what kind of show you're looking at. But we'll certainly talk about all three of them here this evening. Jumping right into it here again, William Byron, your winner here in the race at Martinsville. We had a last-second caution, much like a similar race in 2012. With that had very calm racing in the very beginning of it, very few DNFs aside from some start and parks back in 2012. Of course, that race ended up being the one where Clint Boyer, who was in the booth here this evening, had that incident with Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson, preventing or at least holding off what was going to be, I believe, what was it, the 200th win for Hendrick Motorsports at the time, that Jimmy Johnson ultimately did get later that year at Darlington. But we didn't have quite the same drama in this one here, even with the last second restart. Joey Logano getting around Austin Dillon, who had a fine run out there. Logano not able to really do more than just have a bit of a bump there to Byron at the start. But other than that, the 24 was just a little bit too fast. Seemed like this was going to be Chase Elliott's win to take very easily and join his three teammates in scoring his first win this season, sweeping, I believe, the first two stages there. Was a fine performance for him. It seems like, if he wasn't able to pull it off quite in this race, it seems like it won't be too much longer before he punches his ticket along with the other teammates there too. Same thing with Joey Logano. We go into the Bristol race next week where he won last year, although, as many have pointed out, they have reconfigured that track significantly since then. So maybe it's, I would say, still a similar track, maybe not entirely a different event there, but it's going to have its own unique aspects to it, but we'll certainly talk about that too during that one. Martinsville, I think the biggest thing that is certainly going to be talked about with this race is just the lack of cautions or lack of incidents that we had in this race and how difficult it was for drivers to pass. These are things that are much more identified with the Gen 6 car, and particularly the 550 horsepower package in the past, neither of which were used tonight. But track position was just key. Reminds me a lot even of like the 2000 Daytona 500, where I believe it was a different shock package that year, created a situation where nobody could be able to pass unless you were a Ford, and when you were a Ford, you can just do whatever you want. As you guys are pointing out here too, the cold weather. 2500 didn't really fall under this, but other races like the 2013 Daytona 500 do. Races that are cloudy or otherwise run later in the day. Of course, in this one, we did have sleet and rain coming into this one here that pushed the race actually later than its originally started time. And as later you get into the night, the colder things get. Luckily not pushing this to the pre-dawn hours like the Southern 500 not long ago. But we did have a situation there where, maybe it wasn't the most competitive race there. But one other thing that I think should be talked about, and I did mention this during it, I thought the broadcast was excellent. I thought this was probably one of the best Cup broadcasts that Fox has done in a while. And I think it finally showed a bit of situational awareness to have some flexibility in one race or another. On that subject, actually, right before this race started, I was still cobbling together video clips into my recording of my broadcast critique video, which has now grown to a 40-minute monstrosity that is going to be on the channel here in the near future. Those of you who are in the $5 and up levels of the Patreon will get advance access to that when it's out, and I believe the next week or so here I'm kind of looking at. But a lot of the criticisms I've had of these broadcasts haven't really applied as much to the Cup broadcasts anyway. I do believe that Mike Joy does a great job having, kind of that leadership role in the booth. I think he just elevates everybody else in there. I think even if you have a lot of people that work the Xfinity or Truck Series broadcast, he seems to bring out the best in everybody. And I think that's another of his many talents that he has when he's in the booth. I think that was fantastic. And I think that was shown really tonight. Austin Dillon's story, even from the very early stages, was being covered. Even before it was clear that this race was going to be something that was going to be clean and green for most of the night, and maybe not the typical crash fest that you would expect at Martinsville, certainly after the last couple of nights that we had. I was very impressed with the level of intensity and entertainment, really, that was focused. And not entertainment in a goofy, oh, we're being silly and look at this Photoshop thing that the graphics teams put together, but more in actually, entertaining as in you're being engaged in the race. The race is still the central focus. So I thought that was really good. And I think the Richmond race last week perhaps was an indicator to them that they needed to change strategy a bit, given that they were kind of caught off guard by the tire strategy at the end and who was able to work their way in there. So kudos to them. I think I was very impressed with that. I think Chad Knaus did a good job on that. I think that he did offset Clint Boyer kind of being the louder Darrell Waltrip type in the group there. And I think they balanced off each other really well. I think that was the closest we've had to something. I think a more calming presence in there, I think, is also particularly helpful to Mike Joy, who is able to, again, mediate these things really well. But he needs somebody that's, again, a bit more of a scholarly, a bit more of a professional type there. And, as he had worked well with Larry McReynolds. Larry McReynolds can be really boisterous too. But I think that, he and Mike in particular, I think really played off each other very well and balanced with Darrell Waltrip back then. Now we got DW again coming back next week, so we'll see how that goes. I think DW and Clint Boyer in the group is going to be a little bit too much, but again, it's going to be the dirt race. So I think they're just kind of throwing everything at the fence and just going to make it as crazy as possible. And we might have a bit more comedy in that week. But I think for this particular race, I was very pleased with it. And I'm every week I seem to have to rewrite this video I've been working on about it. But none of it has really, again, been as focused on Mike Joy. I do mention him in the video, but I believe he's more the example that people should be following in the current broadcast these days. I think today was another good example of that. So I hope that that's going to be cleared up a bit more in the days and weeks ahead there too. But that's going to be the other project that's going to be coming out here. And I do have another project that's going to be more NASCAR history focused here that I was able to make some more progress on that this week. And we'll hopefully get some more news on that in the near future as well. But yeah, no rubber buildup. I'm seeing that in the comments here too. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was that one part where they were showing turns 3 and 4 or turns 1 and 2. Right before the initial start, and then like halfway through the race, and it didn't look any different. There were like a few marbles in the outside lane, and that was about it. Yeah, it was definitely not taking rubber as well as it had in the past. Not sure what the tire drop off was, or other than just a meme at the beginning of the race with Clint Boyer. But yeah, I almost was wondering if the cars were just too evenly set. But then I was thinking back to the Busch Clash, which is at a track, of course, that was even smaller than this. And I thought there was a lot more that was going on there. I think in terms of people navigating through traffic, occasionally somebody would get bumped out of the way, that you had people that could kind of catch each other there. Yes, it did kind of have a longer run towards the end. But I think that they put on a really entertaining show in that one there. And maybe in this one, it was not coming out in exactly the same way. Going to be very interested to see how this track is going to perform as a penultimate round of the championship again, of course, since it's going to be at that part of the season before we go to Phoenix. I don't know if, how much more these drivers and teams are going to understand these cars between now and then. Obviously, by then, they'll have run on literally every other track that is currently on the Cup schedule. So, I anticipate that'll probably be a better race in that standpoint. But, again, I think there's still some positives to be gleaned from it. I think as expected, Hendrick Motorsports has been the first one to really figure out these cars, at this particular track, with Chase Elliott and William Byron pretty much having this race all to themselves, for the entire distance. But other guys able to be a factor in one way or another there. But yeah, mentioning Austin Dillon earlier, again, great job by him finishing third. Almost got the 1-2 finish with Byron, which, as mentioned in the broadcast, would have been the first time since the 1999 fall race there with Jeff Gordon over Dale Earnhardt. Those of you who remember back then, that was actually the first race where Jeff Gordon did not have Ray Evernham as his crew chief. Evernham had just left to start the Dodge program at that point, and Brian Weitzel had stepped in as his crew chief. Weitzel actually won that race with Gordon, as well as the following race at Charlotte, before Robbie Loomis came in, I believe, as the next crew chief at that point. Loomis was previously with Petty Enterprises way back in the day, like with the King back in 1992. But very nearly had that situation there. I mean, the Childress teams have been solid this year. This is the first race, really, I think, since the first couple, that we've seen the Childress teams get back kind of up to where they needed to be. We didn't see as much out of Tyler Reddick, but certainly Austin Dillon having a fine run out there was good to see. Trackhouse continuing their series of top fives after kind of falling off the mark at Richmond. Ross Chastain pulling off the fifth place finish just ahead of Kurt Busch. Ryan Blaney in the mix there in the fourth spot. I thought he was going to be even better at Richmond last week, but he had a much better showing here this time around, being able to bounce back. Speaking of bouncing back there, Kyle Busch in the seventh spot. Eric Almirola in eighth, had a fine qualifying run to start this off. Another top 10 for him. Fine showing for him. Chase Briscoe in ninth. And Chase Elliott, after a very promising start to the race, has to settle for the 10th spot there, just ahead of Austin Cindric, just on the outside of the top 10. But looking at the back of the field, it was pretty much an uncontested battle for last place. A.J. Allmendinger was the third occasion that a Kaulig racing team this year in the Cup Series has had to serve a pass-through penalty for failing inspection at least 3 times. The previous ones were both Daniel Hemrick at Daytona and just last week with Justin Haley. This one's cycling back over to Allmendinger. So Allmendinger had to do a pass-through penalty, and probably the worst race that could have possibly happened to him is a race where there's no cautions except the stage cautions, and where the leaders are just in an entirely different zip code as Chase Elliott and Byron were for this entire distance here. Allmendinger lost laps about as quickly as our last place finisher BJ McLeod did at the very beginning. McLeod had an issue with the steering on his car after he had slowed down on the backstretch and dove onto pit road. It seemed like it was just a flat tire, but then there was an issue where the steering wheel wasn't straight. They ended up pulling the car behind the wall. The more that they looked at the car, the more they realized that it was going to take entirely too long to disassemble the steering rack. There was a lot of communications about the steering rack there at that point. And of course, with them the only car in the garage area through about the first third of the race, I think they just didn't have any need to keep going. And ultimately, they had officially dropped out of the race just short of the halfway point when NASCAR made their announcement. And McLeod unofficially, again, pending the post-race inspection, the only driver to actually finish the race not under power, actually finish the race in the garage area. Second last place finish of the year for the Live Fast Motorsports team. The previous one was a couple weeks ago with Andy Lally driving the car. Both of these, interestingly, involved Brad Keselowski in one way or another. It was actually a more serious incident with Keselowski. The Keselowski actually responded on Twitter about there very briefly, just saying, well, yeah, that sucked. When he collided with the 78 car and the 78 fell out of the race. In this case, apparently, according at least to one person on Twitter there, the 6 car had actually knocked a tire down on the 78 car that kind of started all these problems here in this race tonight. Ultimately, McLeod ending up your last place finisher. Keselowski, I think, was on the lead lap through the later stages. And yes, he actually finished in the 17th spot there. Kyle Larson, the last of the 19 cars that were shown on the lead lap. But another measure of this race, too, given the fact that it was so hard to make a pass and so hard to work your way into competition there, you definitely had drivers that once they had some kind of a problem, unless the caution fell exactly their way, they just weren't going to be able to be a factor again. Christopher Bell and Cole Custer, who ironically ended up being the first 2 drivers off the lead lap in 20th and 21st, both looked like they were going to be shoo-ins for top 10s, if not top 5s, but ultimately were felled by different issues there on pit road. Custer with a wheel that got loose there, and a Bell, I believe he had the crew members over the wall too soon. Unfortunate deal for both of them. I think they both needed a good run. Bell, in particular, seems to be having these problems from one week to the next. When he's having the best run, that seems to be when something serious happens there, drops him back. Recall, of course, his yellow line penalty in Atlanta just a few weeks ago that knocked him out of the top 10 there. So unfortunately, that streak continues for him. Allmendinger, mentioned him earlier. He ended up climbing to the 24th spot, finishing 2 laps down there. So gaining some of that ground after that pass-through penalty. But again, a difficult situation for him. Daniel Suarez ended up back in the 29th spot, so not able to be up there with his teammate, Ross Chastain. But then among the lead lap drivers, Chris Buescher, I think he was actually one of the right answers on the Clint Boyer questions thing here for like the fastest lap, I believe it was. So a fine, lead lap finish at least for him. Eric Jones looked like he was going to threaten for possibly a top 10 there on strategy at the end. Ends up being in the 13th spot. But I think a lot of people had probably watched that 2012 race over again, knowing that there's not going to be a situation where, you're going to be able to be out there on old tires and everybody else pitting behind you. We definitely didn't have that situation this time around where pretty much everybody in the top 10 or at least the top 8 stayed out. Guys like Kyle Busch and so forth behind him actually coming down pit road there. So we didn't have exactly the same scenario that Clint Boyer, of course, is very aware of in that standpoint here. But a little bit of a different kind of race here. Certainly when compared to both the Saturday and the Friday races, we'll definitely talk about those as well. Obviously, yesterday was quite much more of a tumultuous race than what we saw here tonight. Brandon Jones, your surprise winner on 140 lap old tires, was able to complete a pass on his teammate Ty Gibbs, a clean pass, mind you. On a late race restart following a ridiculous pileup in turn 1, very reminiscent of the pileup that we had at Knoxville last year in the Truck Series. I think it was Carson Hocevar that pointed that out pretty quickly there after the incident happened. You had a huge pileup there. Brandon Jones comes out the other side. Landon Castle and Sam Mayer end up pouncing on Gibbs there at the end. Mayer ends up stuffing Gibbs into the outside wall. And as the lights are flickering there for the checkered flag, we have an incident on pit road there between Ty Gibbs and Sam Mayer. And of course, there was no shortage of hot takes and cold takes on all of that there at the same time. I have to say, I was tweeting it. The tweet I posted initially saying that, okay, well, gosh, Ty Gibbs' stay in the hauler is probably going to get a little bit longer here. That was just a moment before the fight started happening. I was like, oh, wow, well, there you go. Wasn't exactly sure how deep this rivalry had actually run between Sam Mayer and Ty Gibbs, but it was interesting to see, of course, a fight. I mean, quite honestly, we had some craziness down there. And Gibbs, of course, mentioning his stay in the hauler, was already going to be a big story coming into that, because in the early laps, NASCAR's lead official there was very upset at him for not slowing down for the safety equipment under the early caution. And I do recall some races earlier this year. I don't know if they exactly involved Gibbs, but it did seem like it was just recent weeks where they were having a real hard time telling drivers to slow down for the safety equipment out there. And I guess Gibbs just hasn't been getting that message. So that was already going to happen before the race was even settled. And at that point, Gibbs seemed like he was going to cruise to a pretty easy win. But then, of course, you get this fight on pit road there, and things kind of got out of hand pretty quickly there. I will have to admit, and trying to stay as objective as possible in one of these scenarios here, I'm not entirely impressed with if the driver is going to have a fight and the guy that's confronting the other guy is still wearing his helmet while the other guy isn't. I think that comes off a little... The optics are not good. I'm sure that drivers and teams know how to police themselves better and could probably articulate this better. But I think a lot of people, whatever their feelings were about Ty Gibbs and how he has carried himself in the first part of his career here, I mean, we're just barely a year after he won his first Xfinity race last year. I was certainly not impressed with that. I think that I don't particularly care if these drivers fight. I think that it could be a very frustrating thing, being out there and you're getting your fenders beat off by any other driver out there. You're having you're hot, you're exhausted, you've been doing this for hours, or maybe you have a good run going and then something stupid happens at the last second that screws you out of it. I mean, you could be absolutely furious about it. I don't blame any of these drivers for wanting to be in a fight or getting in a fight any more than, they use profanity over the radio. That's just part of what the sport is. I think that we don't have to pretend that this is a garden party out here, folks. I mean, this is, fights are going to happen. I don't think that, they need to be necessarily completely out of control. I don't think it needs to be complete anarchy at the same time, but I do think these drivers and teams are able to police themselves. I think the frustrating thing is always when it becomes a big dog pile and suddenly you get all these other people out there that just come out of the woodwork that, are a part of it, and it just becomes a big mess. But, maybe that's just as much of a commentary on the human condition, as anything else. But yeah, I have to say, I mean, I'm certainly not impressed with how Ty Gibbs handled it. I don't particularly care how Sam Mayer handled it. I think that certainly he came out of the car and suddenly he's got this guy coming up to him with his helmet on. And yeah, of course they're going to have words. And apparently, as Coleman Presley, who again was, I think, another big star in the broadcast this weekend, I thought he did a fantastic job, bringing up the context of this rivalry that's been going on between Mayer and Gibbs, and really kind of illustrating that. I think he did a better job, frankly, than the people at the booth actually did for that race. But it kind of helped build that up as that storyline came together there. But yeah, certainly don't blame Sam Mayer for being upset there at the same time. And they're going for that bonus and the dash for cash and everything. I mean, it's going to get really physical at some point. And, if you don't want to get your bumper hit there at the end of the race, then you probably better put as much distance between you and him as possible. If you get yourself caught, I mean, you never know what's going to happen. And I do think that, as much as I know there are some people that are probably, more that have followed the sport a long time, or people that are newer viewers who both think at the same time that, like, look, it shouldn't be like this all the time. It shouldn't be that everybody runs over each other all the time. You can only contain that so much. I think that every once in a while something like this happens. But I do think that in Gibbs's case, it could have been handled a bit better. Maybe if he had his helmet off, he would have handled it differently. And maybe Mayer would have handled it differently. It would have been interesting to see. But unfortunately, those aren't the facts that we were left with here. As to if something's going to happen, not holding my breath on it. I'm of the people of the persuasion that think that, of course, the family connection with the Gibbs there, I think it would be very difficult for them to do something. I certainly don't think it's going to be anything serious to the extent of suspending him for races. I don't think that's going to be the situation. Although I do think that one of the other countervailing forces I wanted to hear more about is this NASCAR official that apparently injured his knee from the reports that I heard there and had to be taken to an ambulance afterwards. It was thankfully revealed that he was checked and released that evening. Apparently he's going to go undergo further examination this week, although at the same time. But yeah, I think that if that's the case, I think that's, understanding how that person got injured, that may actually sway the opinion as to, if suspensions are warranted. I hope NASCAR is looking into it. And I think, given NASCAR's already look at Ty Gibbs to begin with about, blasting around cars under caution, I think they're already keeping their eye on him here. And I think the last thing you want to do as a young driver, I don't care how much backing you have or anything, you don't want to make an enemy out of NASCAR because they'll make an example out of you very quick. It is their sandbox and they will mess with you any way that they please if you give them a reason or if you even appear to give them a reason. So that's going to be the situation. So I'm not expecting anything draconian out of it because I think at the same time, certainly in a race tonight, they were very eager to play a lot of clips of it there. And that's always the duality of this is they're going to say, oh, we don't like it when the drivers get into fights and we're not going to accept this and so forth. And at the same time, they're going to use this to, as a promo for the Bristol Dirt race for sure, even though the Xfinity series isn't even there. And they certainly used it to hype up the attention on tonight's race when it was turning into a pretty clean and green affair there for those 400 laps. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to find out. I'm not holding my breath that something big's going to happen there, but, I do think that if anything has happened in this case, I do think Ty Gibbs has unfortunately put himself on NASCAR's radar. and maybe in the same sense as like a Tony Stewart or an AJ Foyt or somebody else in the past. And we're probably going to have a situation like that. So, we'll see what happens there. But in point of fact, I thought that was, even though, unlike tonight's race, that Xfinity race had a ridiculous amount of cautions, 16 cautions for 100 laps in that one. That's absurd. Almost half the race distance under the caution flag. It certainly felt like that. Every incident from one point to the next. And it started from the very beginning. Your last place finisher, we haven't even talked about him yet, Brennan Poole, getting, unfortunately, his second straight last place finish, which was such a heartbreaker. Mike Harmon Racing has had an awful time trying to qualify their cars this year. They had those engine problems at Fontana back when I was covering out there, which is going to be Poole's first attempt of the season. They ended up not qualifying the car because the car was just sounded flat across the line there. They made the race in Vegas, I believe, and then they had an engine problem in the earlier laps, and then they get in the race here. They improved tremendously. I think they were second fastest at Dale Jr. when they first got on the track there. And then apparently, according to folks in the stands, and big thanks to Conrail in particular on Twitter there for his pictures contributed over here this weekend, apparently had smoke coming from the 47 even when they were on pit road, and they were still allowed to start the race. Smoke got a lot worse when the green flag dropped, and then it went huge in turns 1 and 2, ended up pulling behind the wall. The Harmon team, I will give, again, I think much like last year, they just threw everything at that car, trying to get him back out there. It wasn't just simply, you see the results and see 0 laps and clutch failure on the results. It's not like they just had that and then they just quit and loaded it up. They were actually trying to get that car back out there and spent enough time that a couple other drivers were also dropping out there. A drive shaft failure for Brett Moffitt, and another one, a rather scary one, for Howie DeSavino III at the Alpha Prime team there, where it actually punched a hole in the floorboard of the car. Very scary stuff. Sounds like Howie was okay, which is certainly good news, but that pretty much ended their race pretty quickly there. But Poole, unfortunately, not able to get back out there after that issue. And hopefully they could figure things out here during this off weekend for the Bristol Dirt race before they head over to Talladega. And we'll see how things shake out there. Hate to see anybody struggle, especially that early in the race there, and especially an underfunded team, because I think a lot of good was done with their qualifying run, and they were getting a lot of attention for it. I'll give the networks credit on that too. I think the qualifying broadcast recognized that suitably well. One other story that developed during the Xfinity race I want to touch on too was the situation with Natalie Decker. Decker, of course, has her share of fans and detractors at the same time, and I think given the number of times that she's shown up on the last car page, even when she's not finished in last, I think it'd probably make people certainly understand that. But in this particular case, she had an incident with the brakes, had problems with the brakes on the number 28 car, the RSS Racing entry that the Realm team was helping out field in the race. I mentioned on Twitter, and this was the case over the radio there, that she was having difficulty over trying to find her way out of the garage area. A very small garage, but also a very tight garage at the same time. And the team did express frustration over this, like, oh, for Pete's sake, things of that nature. And ultimately she did get back on the track and finish the race under power. I do think one thing it's important to bring up, just for the sake of context here, is that she was not the only one that was having trouble getting out of that garage area. Even tonight, BJ McLeod had to be carefully navigated through the garage at night there with the spotter and so forth there. And that was when he was the only one that was back there, with only 36 teams in the Cup Series field tonight. So I think it's possible that it's just a really narrow and treacherous place to kind of work through. And I think a lot of people looked at that and believed that this was like an unusual situation. Although I do think the team was kind of frustrated with her for other reasons that night there, perhaps, running in the back of the field there to begin with. So there was, it certainly added to that in that circumstance there. But I do want to clear up that, apparently it looks like that there were other drivers that were having trouble with it. I don't know if it's just that part of the track isn't lit very well compared to the track surface. That could certainly be the case. I mean, garage area in Vegas tended to be pretty dark during the races that we went to last fall, but maybe that had a role in it as well. But unfortunately, that was a rough night for her as well, finishing in the 35th spot in the bottom 5. But after that big pile up, and that was pretty crazy, again, the Knoxville like pile up there, we did have some good runs out of some other drivers up there. It's good to see Ryan Sieg in the top 10, Jeremy Clements as well. Both those teams still trying to get up there. Wasn't crazy about them having to change the graphics on the 51 there. I thought that was too much of a burden for a small team to have to deal with, especially when they were trying to focus more on getting the car actually ready to compete. Mike Harmon himself had dealt with this. He had a throwback at Darlington a couple years ago where he had red numbers on the doors and a silver stripe along the side of it. And they actually made him take the whole stripe off the car. This was, with the laser inspection and so forth. Unfortunately, that the allowance for numbers and things of that nature hasn't quite reached the Xfinity series, although they did still have the reflective numbers that were closer to the Cup Series ones. It was this kind of other luminescent pattern that seemed to be the issue that NASCAR was criticizing there. Which was surprising me. I didn't notice any difference personally myself, but as others were able to bring to my attention there this weekend, it was clearly a different number there when you can compare them side to side. Dale Jr., as much as I'm not a big fan of Jr. running individual races here after he's retired, I think it's best that he just kind of enjoy his retirement. Obviously, when you see him celebrating with other drivers out there, drinking beers with like Kyle Weatherman and stuff afterwards, you know how much he misses it and you know how much he enjoys it. And I think picking tracks like this, I'm glad he didn't do something like ridiculous like the Atlanta Super Speedway race or something like that. A race like this where it's, it's physical, it's kind of a throwback event, and just doing it as a one-off there. I guess, you can't really criticize him too much there. But I just don't want to see him get hurt. I think that's the biggest concern I have. I can only think of what happened with Neil Bonnet when he tried to do that partial season in 1994 and how that turned out there. But obviously the cars are much safer. The JR Motorsports team is going to give him a good piece. And in fact, he had a good enough piece to recover from a spin there and get an 11th place finish. So that was certainly good to see. Mentioning good runs from the Xfinity race, Parker Retzlaff with a great finish. Didn't seem like he was going to get another one there. Richmond and the Phoenix run before the Phoenix mechanical failure that he had out there seemed like this was going to be the first one where Retzlaff wasn't going to be much of a factor, finishing outside the top 20. Then that pileup happens, and suddenly he's back up there in the 12th spot, even with an overheating car. Ends up finishing in 12th there, so kudos to him. That kid continues to be really impressive, and I can't wait to see what he does in whatever his next race is. I don't know if they're going to enter him at Talladega or not. I think that's going to be kind of a different challenge there, but he's certainly been impressive in these short tracks and smaller tracks so far here, and we'll see how things shake out there. Further back there, we mentioned Kyle Weatherman earlier, finishing the 16th spot, second straight start that he's driven for Jesse Iwuji's team, that he has now given the Iwuji team their best ever finish. I think this may work out fantastically for Weatherman if he can stay in that team for as many races as possible, maybe cobble together a full season effort with what he's already done with Mario Gosselin's team this year. I think that'd be great to see. I thought he was very impressive when he was driving for Mike Harmon, giving them their first top 10 finish back in Kentucky in 2020. I think still stands out at a fantastic small team moment for him. But I think that's something else that he can really build off of there. So I certainly wish him and the team the best there going forward. But yeah, I got to say though, yeah, that's been absolutely fantastic there for what's happened there with some of these other drivers and teams there, and especially Brandon Jones on the win. Jones has shown up on LastCar's page so often for having first lap issues. It's amazing that in this one, where another driver, Brennan Poole, this time falls out of the race after the opening lap, that Brandon Jones ends up pulling off the victory there. And again, 130, 140 lap old tires that shouldn't have been able to stick that well on the inside. But man, gotta give him props on and passing him clean. Didn't even have to lean on him. I thought that was extremely impressive. I thought that was really cool to see. So hopefully we'll be seeing more of that out of him as well. Alrighty. So let's see here. Sam Mayer still got 5th after the incident with Gibbs. Gibbs dropped back to the 8th spot there as he crossed the line. Bailey Curry, he was about to get like a top, I think he was like 13th when the big wreck happened. He was right behind Ryan Sieg. Still ends up in the 17th spot despite the damage he had. Actually, he's still in the lead lap, so kudos to the JD Motorsports folks for getting him back out there. Other guys had more struggles there. Jade Buford, he's kind of been on the kind of a slide here these last couple races after he did so well, at least midway through the Atlanta race a couple weeks ago. He ends up finishing back in the 22nd spot here. I guess it was Coda that he did better too. Of course, he's got that road course background, so that's certainly good to see. But yeah, pretty crazy race though, and everything else from that end there too. I hate that Jimmy Means' team and the Bassett brothers still have not started a Xfinity Series race this year. That challenge is going to extend at least into Talladega. Certainly would expect the Means team to be there, given that that's Jimmy's home track. Although Jimmy, of course, has been on record that he's not a huge fan of that track. He was just happy to get out of that track alive back when he was a driver. The Bassett brothers, going to be interesting to see if they can get the 77 car in there. It's been since the Coda race last year that car even qualified, and that was when they had, I believe Cole Custer was driving the car. Was it Custer or was it Austin Dillon? It was one of them, I believe, on that one. They had a really good Cup Series guy behind the wheel there to get them into the show, but that's not been the situation since then. Let's see. We'll go back to the Truck Series race here as well. William Byron, the big shock here, pulled off the victory. I think it was a nice tribute to Ricky Hendrick he did. I thought that was a nice touch there. But again, I think that again, Cup guys in the Truck Series, it's just not necessary. It's absurd, and I don't care if the sponsor dictates this. Especially the sponsor in this case is Hendrick Cars. So okay, what's the justification here that you're saying, okay, I want William Byron to be in more races? It's like, well, okay, why don't you, I don't know. Why does it have to be in the Truck Series? Like, why? And again, we're now putting in guys in the Truck Series that have won this season. So then you got William Byron, it's now won 2 races. You got Alex Bowman at Coda, who already won at Las Vegas. These guys are already going to be playoff eligible. I mean, what possible good is putting him in the Truck Series? It would have been a great story if the results stayed the same. Johnny Sauter pulled off the win. Now, yes, I wasn't impressed with his body slam of Haley Deegan at the beginning of the race. It seemed like that was pretty egregious. But I will say at the same time that Sauter's starting at the back of the field, where he hasn't run this ThorSport entry at all this season. That the only start he's had this year has been the G2G Racing entry, which had all kinds of electrical problems at Daytona. He gets back in that 13 truck, starts at the back of the field, and wins the race. I think that would have been fantastic. And I'm not even the biggest Johnny Sauter fan out there, so that would have been interesting to see, but unfortunately wasn't the situation there. But he did finish ahead of Kyle Busch, so I guess there's something to be looking at there at the same time. In the 3rd spot, John Hunter Nemechek and Ben Rhodes, your top 5 there. Dean Thompson on the other end of the field there continues to have a lot of struggles this year, along with Jack Wood for GMS Racing. They finished in the bottom 2 spots there. Both of them have had all kinds of struggles this year among the full-timers, certainly newcomers. Wood, your defending NASCAR Truck Series champion, was the only driver that had 2 last-place finishes last year. Dean Thompson now this year has already scored his 2nd straight. So apparently we are not going to have a season in the Truck Series with 1 last-place finish for each driver in the field this season. Either Thompson was actually a last-place finisher back at Daytona at the beginning of this season with an incident on pit road. This one, a bizarre electrical issue, almost similar to what happened with Brennan Poole the next day. The 40 truck slowing as he was pulling off of turn 4 and then having to stop over in turn 1. A little bit of a fire around the area of the gear shift, it seemed, and he climbed out of the truck. There was some interesting discussion over the radio about if Thompson was going to be able to get back onto the track. There was an indication that at least one official had told the team that if the driver climbs out of the truck because of a fire, and if they can get the truck piece back together, that they can get back out there. I'm not sure if that is a rule because it seems like NASCAR is pretty strict when a driver jumps out of the truck or vehicle that they're done for the day, even to the point where they monitor if the person has the window net up in the garage area. The second issue, too, is that, of course, if you have a fire in the truck, you're generally going to have the fire extinguisher go off, and then at that point, you really aren't going to be able to go out there because the extinguisher is going to have to be recharged. So that could be very much an issue on that sense. But one way or the other here, Thompson wasn't able to return to the race there. Ended up finishing 13 with 13 laps complete. Electrical issues, the official listed reason for him there. Jack Wood, Caden Honeycutt, among the many first-timers in the field. I think this was an exciting thing, too, that I feel went really underreported, at least during the main broadcast. I didn't watch the pre-race show, so I don't know if they covered that any better. But they had, 6 different drivers in the Truck Series looking to make their series debut. And even though qualifying was rained out, I believe 4 of them still got to start. The 2 that missed were Justin S. Carroll and Jake Garcia there. They both ended up missing the show. So, yeah, the other 4 made the race. Who was the best of the group there? I mean, they all seem to kind of have struggles here. Blake Lothian there in the 28th spot there. Chase Janes was ahead of him in 25th. And I think that was it. Yeah, I believe, Chase Janes was the top one there in 25th. So there, Blake Lothian in 28th. Dylan Steyer. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it here. This was the gentleman that I mentioned in the last car preview article that had driven actually in the same race that was the first late model race after the passing of Ted Christopher earlier that day. Dylan here was actually part of that field and was making his Truck Series debut here. So I'm sure that was a meaningful performance there for him. Unfortunately, ended up involved in an incident there, finishing in the 32nd spot, 2 spots ahead of Honeycutt there in the 34th spot. This is where I think the Truck Series still has one of its best elements to it, where you have a lot of people talking about newcomers coming in. I know they used to do the Truck Series Spotlight years ago that Phil Parsons and Michael Waltrip did in the booth. I guess Ray Dunlap was part of that too. They did a great job featuring these new kids that were coming in there, telling you who they are and kind of getting you to focus on them, and so you don't just see a name on a page and wonder, hey, who's that? It's like, you should never feel that when you're watching a broadcast. They should actually tell you who these people are. But I think that went a little undercovered in this one. But regardless, Dean Thompson, your last place finisher. Jack Wood, Caden Honeycutt, Spencer Boyd, and Dylan Steyer as your bottom 5 there in this event there. So that was pretty much your top 3 from this, and kind of a different situation there too. Yeah, Blaine Perkins just didn't qualify as well. Yes, that's another one too. Yeah. Oh, we have somebody that was bothersome in the chat there. Thank you to the mods here, Sir Wrinklestein and of course, Beast Metal and the others here for keeping an eye on that there. I apologize if we have some knuckleheads here in the chat there, but unfortunately, that's what happens. But I haven't really looked at the chat here too much tonight, but I appreciate you guys checking that out and doing the hard work there. Austin Dillon was in the 77. Okay, thank you for clarifying that on that there too. Saw that comment on here as well. So, yeah, so kind of an interesting weekend in general. I thought I know there were some comments on Twitter already that they didn't really have good battles for the lead. It seemed like once you had the lead that was, you're pretty much just going to be there. And yeah, it's kind of hard to argue with that. I mean, I think it was surprising that the only time that seemed to be able to be overdone this weekend was when you had that pass between Brandon Jones on Ty Gibbs there in the Xfinity race. So I thought that was kind of interesting from that standpoint. But yeah, William Byron, after starting in the 32nd spot, claims victory there. Your pole winner was Zane Smith. He ends up back in 9th after leading 55 laps. Byron leading 94. I can't wait until they just put Kyle Larson in the truck the next time. And then, oh gosh, Bristol Dirt Race is next week. That's exactly what they're going to do, isn't it? It just occurred to me. That's exactly what they're going to do. Now at this point, I would be shocked if they didn't do it, because Kyle Larson, he was in the Bristol Dirt Race last year, to be fair. I think he drove for Al Neese, if I remember correctly. I think he was in the 44. But yeah, I'd be shocked if he wasn't in that Spire Motorsports truck and have the same Hendrick cars sponsorship. Of course, it's using his paint scheme in the 5. So I guess it's what we've been building to these last couple starts. It's a shame, especially since Austin Hill drove that truck at Daytona. It seemed like it was going to be something that was going to be more towards series regulars, even with Hill in the Xfinity series now. But I don't know. I guess it's probably going to be the situation. We'll find out. We'll have the Entry List Storylines article for you guys this next Thursday, leading into the Bristol Dirt Race for the Truck Series and the Cup Series coming up here. And we'll find out more from there. I want to give a shout out to Brett Holmes as well. I'm seeing his name on the list here, finishing the 24th spot. Didn't have any sponsorship on his number 32 there. Ends up finishing the first truck 1 lap down there in the 24th spot. I mean, a solid run, not the best run that you want to hope for there. But given the crash that we had and the other wrecks that happened in this one, we had 11 cautions in that one for 71 laps. Ended up being a pretty physical race too. I think you could look for the positives as much as the negatives. Yeah, I mean, that's another one to kind of really look at there too. I will say again, I do think still, despite what I'm saying about the Cup Series broadcast at the beginning of the show here, I do think that the Truck Series Xfinity broadcast still showed, I still think these are probably clips that are probably going to end up in my video because they still showed both why the camera work needs some changing and why the broadcasting needs to be tuned up a little bit, because I think Mike Joy tonight did a really good job sounding engaged. I don't think I was even really looking for it. I mean, I know that I'm more preferable to him because, of course, he has that long-standing experience. But that experience means something. I mean, he sounds different than an Adam Alexander or a Vince Welch, and I think that really came to pass tonight. And I hope he and the crew there get their full credit for the show that they were able to put on, in spite of a race that really wasn't the most exciting out there. But I think that they salvaged a decent broadcast out of it. I only wish the same thing could have happened in the other 2 races, which were decent. But I don't know. But we'll see. But that's going to be fun. It'll be cathartic to get that video out here, I think, in this next week or so here, and to kind of discuss some of these issues. And I think it'll have a good pointed discussion. I do believe that some people probably aren't going to be happy about it. I'm going to go into a little bit more, a little harder in the paint, I guess you could say, than I typically like doing in my videos. I know that in the past I've done the terrible broadcast videos or the broadcast comparisons that either make light of the subject or kind of just try not to mention specific people. But this, I feel that may not have been the best. That may not have been the best approach here. So we're going to do things a little bit differently in that situation there too. So we'll see. Robert, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, the Lawless Alan Haley Deegan incident. I have no idea what that was about. I think everybody was fully expecting that we were going to have some kind of situation between Johnny Sauter and Deegan, given that incident that I mentioned earlier there, where she was body slammed off of turn 4 very early in the race and for no particular reason, really. Not sure what Johnny was thinking in that standpoint. And even though that happened so much earlier in the race, I fully expected that was going to be what was going to happen, if anything, on pit road. I don't know what was going on with Lawless. I know he's still very much a newcomer out there. I wasn't really tracking what he and she were doing out there, but clearly she was upset about something. So I'm not exactly sure what was happening with that. But yeah, kind of a different situation there. So I don't know, kind of a different situation there. Okay, thank you, mods, for handling that there too. Yeah, I hate that things pop up like that there too. But again, I appreciate you guys' work over there in the chat there as well. So we'll keep going with our discussion from the races here tonight. We'll do our trivia segment and everything else here from tonight. Maybe make it a little bit shorter of a show because I know it's already 9:30 over here on the West Coast and 12:30 on the East Coast. We got 54 people in here. Wow, thank you guys for tuning in. I know it's been a pretty long deal here, but we'll kind of streamline the show here a bit and do a bit of the fun stuff here in the meantime. All right. So tonight I decided to bring out my JD McDuffie shirt here that I picked up, one of the official shirts that we work with the Jam Screen Printing Company. The McDuffie family has actually put this together with these folks over there, and they've really reissued some of the old graphics that they had from the old fan club shirts, and they've done a really nice job with that there. And I can drop the link in there if you guys are interested. Let me see if I get that pulled up here. Jam Screen Printing, I believe that was the site. Yeah, there we go. There you go. Yeah, if you guys are interested in any of that, I'll drop that. Hang on. I got to open the actual YouTube window to get in there. Hang on. Why does it not want to open? That's crazy. There we go. Hopefully it didn't have an echo effect there. All right. There we go. Let's drop that in there. Okay. Yes, Norm is coming back. That's going to be exciting. Is Jennifer Jo Cobb coming back too? I didn't hear that. But yeah, it'd be fantastic to see Norm Benning back out there again too. I know that apparently he's teased that he's going to have a new sponsor on the truck. Not sure what that's going to be. I'll tell you right away, it's not me. We haven't been in discussions on that. I know the last time that we saw Norm at the track last year at Phoenix had the logo on the B post, so that was really exciting there too. But yeah, I also wanted to make sure to wear the JD shirt tonight because just this week I was able to receive my first printed copy of the JD book there without the gray line over it, without the promo thing on it there. And yeah, there's the final product with the Lascar logo there on the spine. There we go. Hits the light just right. And on the back there. And as you notice, yeah, if you have the older edition there, it is a bit longer. It's about 345 pages, I believe, on this. So yeah, the second edition of the JD book, it is available on Amazon. The print edition is available on there, as well as the digital version that's also been upgraded. So big thanks again to my editor, Robert, who was tremendous in getting that done. That was really a huge thing, just getting it off my table there. And also kind of clearing the path to hopefully make the finishing touches on the Derek Cope book in the near future. So that's going to be another thing going on there too. I do have 3 copies of this available in my own personal collection that I'll have available for sale as well. If you guys like me to sign that and have that sent out to you. So I have those available there at the same time. But in the meantime, you can order them on Amazon and you can order it through that way. And if you want yours signed, we can also arrange that at the same time. I actually just recently sent a couple copies back to somebody who picked some up here just recently. So if you're interested in that, you drop me a DM on Twitter or an email or anything like that, and we could certainly hook you up. But yes, copies are all available here with the J.D. McDuffie book here. And of course, included on here is Mike Joy's endorsement of it here at the top of it. So I know I'm a bit biased when it comes to Mike Joy. I do still think he does fantastic work on this, but the other thing that was also very much impressed me is that when I sent out these press copies in July of 2018, he was the first person to get back to me and immediately had an endorsement on that. So I thought that was excellent there. So big thanks to him, and I wanted to make sure to preserve that on the cover. I was surprised the publisher didn't want to do that, but I said, look, no, that's got to be on there. I mean, Mike Joy is huge in the sport. So that was a big one there too. So yeah, so we got all that set up there too. Thank you for checking out. Thank you for reading the book there at on independent reading there, Sir Wrinklestein. Thank you very much. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into our trivia segment here. I don't believe we had a call on the technical inspection yet, have we? Let me close that up and find. Thought I had the Twitter page open still, but I don't think I do. All right. Yeah. Sorry I've been dealing with that, Sir Wrinklestein. I see your comment there on the Twitter page there too, but I do appreciate you keeping an eye on some of that. We're always going to have, I don't know what trolls I managed to attract here, but I guess everybody has somebody's. So that's kind of the thing. That's kind of the thing that happens there. But I do appreciate you guys doing the work there because I know that that's not easy. Where was Ponkrus's feed? Let me get that. There it is. Should pretty much have this bookmarked. Cup owner points, Martinsville results. Okay, not seeing any other updates here in the last hour. So we'll do a few questions here And yeah, am I? I keep mispronouncing the name. Oh shoot! Well, there you go. Is it Rink? Let's see. Relkenstein. Is it Relkenstein? I don't know. I'm gonna need a phonetic one on that one, buddy. So there's that. But anyway, let's go ahead and go into our trivia segment here. For everybody tuning in, we'll wrap up the show from that standpoint there. So again, we're using our late 90s trivia machine here, the Tiger Electronics one. And we have a few categories here, 6 categories to be exact. Categories again are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Categories once again are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So go ahead and mention in the chat which category you'd like. And we'll do, sorry about that, we'll do a few more questions here for the evening, and we'll wrap up here. I feel a little flat-footed on the show tonight. I think it's because it's a late evening show. It just feels kind of weird, but we'll get through it. Be good practice for Bristol next week, which I guess is also going to be a night race, but that'll be our Easter show. I guess we'll have to do a pastel theme for that one, so that'll be interesting. I pronounced it right the third time. Okay, well, there you go. Alrighty. If you guys have any other questions, anything I haven't talked about on the show tonight, let me bring my notes out here and see what else I have. There's something else I forgot to mention. Not that one. I'll mention these here at the same time here. I do have a couple other notes. So the Hall of Fame announcements were revealed this week, the Hall of Fame nominees. I know there was a lot of discussion about whether or not Matt Kenseth is going to be in it because of the incident with Joey Logano. It's actually kind of interesting timing, of course, this being Martinsville weekend, and especially the Ty Gibbs and Sam Mayer incident that we had just yesterday. I personally don't think it's going to matter. I think it would be a double standard if that mattered at all for people in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. It's not the same thing as a Pete Rose, gambling on baseball kind of situation if he just got in this deliberate wreck. If you're going to, ban people for deliberate wrecks in NASCAR, you're probably going to have to pare down quite a few people that are already brought in there. And I think it's also a double standard given the fact that NASCAR is so frequently celebrated, anything from the 1979 Daytona 500 to, any other, aggressive drivers out there. Aggression is something that's celebrated. I think it's that tenacity in racing that people go for. And especially in the case of Matt Kenseth, where, he was just such a great competitor that he was compared to David Pearson of being a guy that saves his car and has some great runs out there. He's a 2-time Daytona 500 winner. You got Dale Jr. in there as a 2-time Daytona 500 winner. I mean, why not have Kenseth? I think he's still a good shot at getting in there. And I do think that given the latest restructuring of how they're admitting people into the Hall of Fame by having the old school group and then the more new school group brought in there. It definitely seems to still trend towards recent drivers in these recent few batches. Be kind of surprised if Kenseth wasn't even in there in this particular one. My personal choice, I would have gone with Neil Bonnet and Kirk Shelmerdine among the recent group. Not just the Kirk Shelmerdine as a crew chief, but of course as one of the field fillers. I'd love to see one of the field fillers actually make it in to the Hall of Fame. I'd like to see Morgan Shepherd in there one of these days too, for the same reason. But also 2 competitors in particular that have had, a long time presence in the sport. And Neil Bonnet in particular too. I think it'd be great for people to kind of rediscover his career, not just as a driver, but as a broadcaster. And of course, the way that, sadly we've lost him since then. He obviously left a tremendous mark on the sport as well. I would love, to see him in there, and Susan Bonnet, I'm sure would, given what what happened with Mike Stefanik last year, I would hope that Susan Bonnet would be able to be involved in the induction at that point there too. As to the landmark ones there, even further back, Herschel McGriff. I think we need to get McGriff in there while he's still with us too. Talk about a guy with a long time investment in the sport. almost before there even was a NASCAR. I mean, it's tremendous. The dude ran at Sears Point in 1993 in his last start. I mean, it's incredible how much that man has experienced. I think it would be an incredible goal to actually try to cover as much of that career as possible and welcome him into the Hall of Fame. If you're not going to put Herschel McGriff in the Hall of Fame, I don't know, it seems like it's only a matter of time, and I think it'd be best to get him in there while he can still celebrate it too. So I think that would be another one that I'm looking at too. But yeah, I think Kenseth should be in there before any of them? No, frankly, I don't think so. But yeah, I would love to see Shelmer. That's my votes I would go with. And then of course with I guess it's the Landmark Award there too. Janet Guthrie for sure on that one. Anything that brings up Janet Guthrie, I think is fantastic. And I'm glad that her story's already been getting a lot more attention, in recent years there too. Mike Joy, mentioning him earlier, he did have an interesting tweet this week about Victory Lane that I think opened a lot of people's eyes, about Victory Lane becoming a joke in recent years, because you have all these different sponsors clamoring for attention, people putting stuff on top of the cars, or the driver can't jump on the roof, and all that other stuff there, that it was probably just too many layers of stuff going on, and that's why there's been this transition to having interviews on the front stretch. And this transition's happened very gradually and made Victory Lane kind of a redundancy, that by the time the car is in Victory Lane, the car is practically undrivable because the tires have been shredded off during their donuts and everything. And you're almost encouraged to just destroy your car on the front, on the starting line after winning the race there. I mean, gone are the days when somebody's doing a parade lap around the track and with their hand out the window holding the checkered flag. It seems like it's been forever since we've seen something like that, although I'm sure it hasn't been. I still think there is a place for Victory Lane. I would hate to see it become kind of an outdated concept. Mike Joy, I don't want to put words in Mike Joy's mouth. He wasn't saying that, it's something that needs to be eliminated, but he was saying that it was something that was becoming unfeasible for a TV broadcast because there were so many moving parts. Now, back in the day, you had a guy like the Hat Man, for example, that gets talked about a lot, that was kind of the mover and shaker that was able to kind of coordinate, okay, you're going to get these pictures, you're going to get this interview, I'm coordinating who's coming in where, which sponsor representatives here and all that. It kind of made sense of that. And we haven't really had Bill Broderick, I believe was his name. I guess we don't have that kind of figure in the sport anymore, which is unfortunate because now you have a situation where maybe it is too much chaos and that needs to be reeled back in again. And maybe it could be as simple as that, because Victory Lane is a fantastic location. I mean, each one of these tracks, especially something like Daytona, where you have this massive like Coliseum like thing right in front of like the media center in the infield. It's gorgeous. I've never been there personally, but I mean, seeing a lot of shots of it, and think of like how many famous shots there are of like teams going to Victory Lane. I mean, I was talking a while back about sponsor, if LASCAR ever got really big, I would love to do something like sponsoring the first entrance to the garage area. And I was kicking around names. The one that I was thinking like, oh, what if we called it LASCAR Lane? Like he's taking a hard left onto LASCAR Lane, and it's like the lane to get into the garage area. But then I thought, well, that's kind of redundant with Victory Lane. But then again, I mean, we talk about, again, there's been Victory Lane not really talked about as much because it's always so secondary to these start finish line interviews, and and people say that it's not as genuine. The interviews aren't as genuine because it's not right after the win happens and so forth. But I don't know. It's still, I think there's going to have to be some kind of a balance at some point there. I mean, whether it's doing these burnouts until you just destroy your car. If that needs to just go away and have people just encouraged to do victory laps again, or what, but it's going to require, the problem with it is, I think if it's ever going to return to the same prominence that it had before, it's going to require stopping other traditions that have kind of filled that vacuum since then. And I'm not sure if that's going to happen, especially when these drivers are younger, generally, and the only way they know of it now, I mean, they can only think back to Kevin Harvick, doing a drag race down the entire front stretch, doing a burnout that long. That's the model now. It's not the norm to be Terry Labonte winning his last race at Darlington and then actually doing a victory lap around the track and going to Victory Lane. It's a shame. It's a shame because I think even from Days of Thunder, Victory Lane has a great mystique to it, but it's just not as much anymore. And I think there were some people that, I think, came out very passionately in that discussion this week that it's a tradition that should be maintained. And I do believe that, but I'm not sure what's going to be the way to do that. Again, maybe a Bill Broderick character would be a good way to start, and just kind of ushering people this way. Because we did see a Victory Lane interview with Ryan Preece last year at Nashville, and it was great, and it was refreshing, and it was so different. And NASCAR had to be very careful to make clear, it's like, look at, whoa, don't go out on the track. We're not going to do an on-track interview. We're going to do this Victory Lane. And it seemed to go, that much better. So, yeah. Ooh, DNF Drive. I like that, RD Fox. There you go. Yeah, something like that. I like the idea of, like, yeah, some kind of thing where that's exactly, I could picture it. Just have the logo painted right there on the ground in the first entrance to the garage area. Just like the Geico restart zone, where sometimes it's on the wall, and then sometimes it's on the flat of the track. That's what I picture. It'd be like on the flat, and be like in the black, red, and white, like on the site. Oh, it'd look awesome. And since the white font, I think, would stand out really well on the pavement. So I think that would kind of be it. But yeah, something like that. Yeah, DNF Drive, Last Car Lane, something like that, where it's there used to be awards for things like that. I mean, we used to have the Goodies Headache Award for the driver that had the worst luck. So I don't think it's entirely unprecedented. But yeah, we're not that big yet. It's going to take some time. But maybe one of these days. So who knows? But yeah, that came up when somebody was asking like about sponsoring a car or a truck. That would be cool. And it was fun doing that with Norm. But I think even better would be something permanent with relating to last place directly. And knowing that the car is always going to have to roll over your logo on the way in there. I mean, that would be kind of cool. But yeah, that's kind of my thought on that one. But we'll see. I also want to talk about this too. Now, I don't like sticking my nose into the whole YouTube drama thing. I try to kind of stay out of it as much as possible. And I know that there are some people that are popular and some people that are not popular, and Twitter drama for that matter too, because that's even worse. I've frequently said on this show that if there was an alternative to Twitter that just focused on motorsports, I would go to that immediately, and I would shut my Twitter account down, because it's just a terrible hate conduit. But I was a little bit troubled by this trend this week when that one channel came out and was saying like, oh, isn't this absurd? There's two Roush Fenway Keselowski cars that are sponsored by the same sponsor. Isn't that ridiculous? Clearly not aware of the long history of teams having two sponsors out there and other examples. I was a little dismayed at how widespread that went. I like to believe that a lot of it was kind of well-meaning, because I was surprised by who all was participating in it, that it was even getting to the point where different teams were doing it and different drivers and different organizations. I actually kind of thought of contributing something to it, because I actually kind of had some other information on why Evernham Motorsports, for example, had both their teams sponsored by Dodge. I actually had some research on that, and I was going to kind of bring that up. But then I was kind of thinking, okay, is that going to sound like I'm dogpiling onto this, or is that something that's going to maybe diffuse this? And I decided to just kind of leave that out altogether. Actually, that's going to actually be part of a later project. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's always kind of a problem with social media for sure. It's very easy to get in a situation where, everybody's posted something dumb or something that maybe you think at the time is like, oh, well, yeah, there are a lot of examples of it, and I was just completely ignorant about it. I mean, everybody has, but it was a little frustrating seeing it, going as far as it went. I think it was a little bit much. Especially if it was something fairly innocuous. It was clearly, out of ignorance. I don't think it was, but it was over something, relatively minor. I mean, okay, it's not Formula One. I get it. I mean, you're talking about, two teams out there that have the same sponsor. And, of course, JD Motorsports had all their cars sponsored by Flex Glue, things of that nature. There's several examples if you think about it, but, I'd hate for anybody to be under that much, speculation, for saying whatever, especially with something like that. I mean, it's not like the person was, accusing somebody of a crime or creating drama or anything like that. I mean, it was just ignorant at absolute worst. and I'm even reluctant to even use that word because really it didn't really matter. It could have just come and gone, but whatever. But I also understand from seeing a lot of the interactions that apparently a lot of people don't, or have issues with this particular person. I don't want to bring more attention to just saying who exactly it was. I know everybody knows exactly who it is. But I'm not a fan of that kind of dogpiling attitude and all that. And I don't really, I try to stay out of it as best I can in situations like that. If there, if there is somebody that you have like an issue with or something like that, I mean, you could have that, but I don't know. I think sometimes it crosses the line a little bit. And I thought that was it was a little distasteful, I thought, but I think some of the bigger outlets that were participating in it maybe weren't aware of what the origin was. Because I think when a meme happens, and this was definitely falling under the tier of a meme here, you kind of forget what the origin is, and people are just participating in it. It's like, oh, this is fun. Look at all these other examples of these teams out there. But I think there can sometimes be a toll there also where, if it, maybe, again, through ignorance on that side of it, ignorance of what the origin was, maybe it is something that could be hurtful to somebody there. So, I'm not the kind of person that wants, to put forward, something that's too far the other direction either. I mean, I do think that, when you put yourself out there, there is a risk that, people are going to notice it and people are going to make a big thing out of it, one way or the other. And I think, there's that too. But I mean, I guess what I'm saying is there's some balancing point there, at the same time too. So, yeah, I don't know how much further to go down the road on that one there, but I mean, I hope that, I hope it's not continuing trend there. I mean, again, but I don't know this person that was involved in it personally. I don't really follow their content or anything. So I can't really speak to that. And I'm certainly not a part of whatever has been going on Twitter with this particular person. So I'm not, I don't particularly acknowledge it, but I do think that there's a line that's too easily crossed when it comes to social media, and people may be having fun, but then what's happening there at whose expense there. So I don't want to make too much out of it either, because I don't want to go too far the other way. I do think that, there are risks inherent when you put anything out there. I mean, I think it getting angry over tweets, I think is I think pretty useless exercise, frankly. But because and the reason I think the problem, I think what comes down to it, and I don't want to make this about me, but I think I'm trying to think like, I'll try to give people latitude as much as I can, because I'll hope that they'll give me latitude if I really screw something up. And I've made mistakes on my sites or things that are incorrect or something like that too. But people are usually really civil about it, and they'll say like, oh, well, yeah, well, wait a minute, this happened. It's like, oh my gosh, you're right. I completely forgot about that. And then, but I mean, people aren't making a meme out of it afterwards. And so I think that's really the big thing. And this kind of goes into what, we've been talking about here and there and some of these other discussions, just give people a little bit of latitude, that's it. Cause I mean, nobody's perfect. We all say ridiculous stuff. You can laugh about it, but, I hope this person has been handling it okay, but, I'll just leave it there. So, yeah, that's pretty much all the notes I have on that for other stuff this week, unless you guys have other stuff to kind of talk about. We got William Byron as the winner, Donnie. Okay, hang on. Donnie Hodgins, thank you for the heads up there. Let me get into that message here. Oh my gosh, Austin Dillon looks like he's about ready to go climb Mount Everest here. He's all bundled up, and the video that's posted on Pockrass's channel. Yes, posted 5 minutes ago. Bob Pockras says tech is complete, no issues. Byron is the winner. Jones and Almirola cars to research and development. So yes, congratulations to William Byron, and it is going to be a BJ McLeod article tonight. So we'll go ahead and wrap that up here with the show here too. So let's see. Tracks. Okay, where are we on? Okay, Sarar, where are we with the categories here? I'm not sure who's the top one. Tracks. Tracks leads with 5, Death Killer. Okay, I see your comment on that. Thank you. Let's see. Tech is complete. Okay, we got that. Oh, JD Land, thank you for the super chat. I didn't see a message on there, but I do appreciate it. If you had a message you wanted me to read, definitely let me know. You don't have to post another super chat if you wanted me to read your message there. You can just post it in the chat there, but I do appreciate it. Tracks 1. Okay, we'll do tracks here. We'll do a few questions on this. See, it figures. I knew I was going to run a bit over on the show here tonight when I said it was going to run a bit shorter, but we'll go ahead and do that. Tracks 5, pits 2. Tracks leads with 5. Okay, we're going to do that. All right, so tracks questions. All right, thank you guys again. Oh, okay, we still got 47 people. I haven't scared too many people off, so that's good. All right, here we go. First question. Who was the first driver to win consecutive Daytona 500 races? Who was the first driver to win consecutive Daytona 500 races? Was Eric Estep sponsoring Clements again? I know he did at Vegas when I was there, and unfortunately he almost got last, but was he on the car again in Martinsville? I didn't see. I don't know, that'd be cool. Yeah, again, I mean, it's good to see a lot of different logos kind of start popping up in different places. Who was the first driver to win consecutive Daytona 500 races? That's the first question. Who was the first driver to win consecutive Daytona 500 races? We got guesses for Yarborough and Richard Petty and Lee Petty and Junior Johnson. His associate sponsor. Oh, yeah, I figured it was an associate sponsor. That's what it was in Vegas, too. But yeah. Who was the first driver to win consecutive Daytona 500 races? And the answer is indeed Richard Petty. I believe it was, oh gosh, I was about to say 72 and 73, but I'm not 100% sure that's right. I was going to say Parsons. Well, Parsons won the championship in 73. And then Parsons won the 500 in 75, I want to say. But yeah, Richard Petty is the correct answer. All right. How many short tracks hosted NASCAR Winston Cup events during the 1998 season? How many short tracks hosted NASCAR Winston Cup events during the 1998 season? Death Killer asking me about G2G Racing. I don't know what's going on over there. They seem to have all kinds of problems at the beginning of the year. Mentioned the electrical issues that Johnny Sauter had. I don't know if he's even slated to run any more races for him this year, because he hasn't since. And then Matt Jaskell had some kind of a falling out there with his sponsor, so it was looking to be a full season thing. I guess they scaled back. So I don't know what's happening over there. I'm pleased that he got some newcomer that was in the truck, although he ended up tearing it up there. But yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what the future is for that team. Hopefully, I don't like to see a team struggling there. I'd like to see as many teams out there involved in the sport as possible, and I'm pleased with how many we've had in the, 73, 74. Okay, cool. Thanks, Glenn. 7,000. But I'm pleased with how many teams we've had in the Xfinity and the Truck Series. Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. That's going to be something that we have to just kind of track on the our entry list storylines from one week to the next. How many short tracks hosted NASCAR Winston Cup events? Short tracks hosted Winston Cup events during the 1998 season. And the answer is 3. 3 is the answer. A lot of you got that one there. Ultimate 23 Dragon, I think you were the first one on that over Stephen C. Sean Doyle, R.D. Fox 76, Blake Thyman, Glenn 7000. There you go. All right. Let's see if we get some a little bit harder ones here. Let's see. What track was the site of Davey Allison's first ARCA win in 1983? What track was the site of Davey Allison's first ARCA win in 1983? Yeah, Ultimate 23 Dragon. Yeah, I see that. I heard that Sauter was going to go back and forth between G2G and Thor Sport, but I'm surprised that he'd only run Daytona. I expected him to be in there a lot more, but then they put Brennan Poole in that truck and some other guys. So I'm not sure if that's still happening or not. I don't know. I mean, seeing Sauter back in the 13 truck kind of made it a bit different there. But I'm not sure if that's still going. We'll see. This dirt race there, I'm not sure if that's going to be the most ideal place to reunite with that team. But I don't know. We're gonna have to find out. What track was the site of Davey Allison's first ARCA win in 1983? You know what I'm really hoping for at Bristol this weekend is the return of that team that Brad Means was involved in last year. I don't know if you guys remember, Ryan Newman was actually about to qualify a truck into the Truck Series dirt race. And as much as I'm not a big fan of Cup Series guys in the Truck Series, as Newman was still at the time as a full-timer, that was going to be really interesting to see how that program did, because apparently they had some real speed out there in practicing. I guess they had practice, and then they got rained out for qualifying in the heats. But unfortunately never got a good chance to show it there in the race there with the chaos that happened that weekend there. Hopefully they turn back up. That'd be interesting to see. What track was the site of Davey Allison's first ARCA win in 1983? The answer is Talladega, of course. Talladega track so intrinsically tied to both Davey Allison and the Alabama gang in general. Ooh, here we go. This is a good one. Next question. What was the only superspeedway where Richard Petty won in a Ford? That's a good one. I like that way. I like the way that's phrased. What was the only superspeedway where Richard Petty won in a Ford? The only superspeedway where Richard Petty won in a Ford is the question. Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting. The Sauter deal is bizarre, and I know Sauter is so vocal on the radio. I mean, I don't see him putting up with a team that seemed to be struggling as much as it did back at Daytona. But obviously, even the Thor Sport injury was. I mean, he just had terrible luck the last couple of years. Even when he would win once or twice, like he would just have mechanical problems at just the worst possible time, and things just didn't quite work out. DCC Racing. Thank you, Death Killer. That was the one. What was the only superspeedway where Richard Petty won in a Ford? That is the question. We got Talladega, Pocono, Richmond, Myrtle Beach, Greenville Pickens, Daytona, Ontario, Michigan. Okay, here we go. Let's see. What's the answer? The only superspeedway who won in a Ford. The answer is Dover. Counts Dover as a superspeedway. That's weird. Dover is the correct answer. I don't think anybody got that one. Pocono, Richmond, Talladega, Myrtle Beach. No, I don't think so. Wow, it stumped the group. Right on. I'm glad we got some good ones in here. Next question. Who won a 200-mile Indy-style race at Darlington in 1950? Who won a 200-mile Indy-style race at Darlington in 1950? Yeah, kind of a weird one. Yeah, we're going for a driver name on this one. Who won a 200-mile Indy-style race at Darlington in 1950? Yeah, don't look it up, but try to guess. Yeah, I know that's a strange one. Yeah, nobody considers Dover a super speedway. Correct. I wouldn't have either. Those of you who said Michigan or Daytona, I was like, okay, yeah, probably one of those. I don't know, but it said Dover. Trick question, I guess. And now we're on to even more obscure things. This might have come up in a NASCAR Man video. Actually, I'm pretty sure it has. Who won a 200-mile Indy-style race at Darlington in 1950? Yeah, Johnny Mantz. It says Indy-style, correct. Joey Fairbanks, yes, you have it correct. It says Indy-style race. I don't know why it doesn't just say open wheel, but I mean, like, does it mean Indy style is in starting 3 wide, or does it? I assume it means the cars. That means like an open wheel thing. I mean, it's weird in NASCAR, but I guess NASCAR did sanction open wheel competition briefly. Who won a 200-mile Indy style race at Darlington in 1950? Marshall Teague, Funny Flock, Marvin Panch, Buck Baker. Yeah, it is weird. All right, here we go. One more time. Who won a 200-mile Indy-style race at Darlington in 1950? The answer is Johnny Parsons. Johnny Parsons. There we go. Good. It came into focus. Johnny Parsons. I think that stumped everybody, too. Wow. Wow. It's been a while since that's happened. It's been a while since that happened. We still got a good amount of people in here, too. Like, that. Usually you get, like, at least one. But yeah, no, I wouldn't have guessed that either. That stumped me too. That was definitely not what I was thinking of. Those of you who said Johnny Mantz, I think that was probably the closest. Alrighty. Well, we'll do one more question here for tonight, and then we'll wrap up here. Last question for the evening, folks. Here we go. What turn at Charlotte Motor Speedway can Humpy Wheeler see from his office? What turn at Charlotte Motor Speedway can Humpy Wheeler see from his office? Yeah, Johnny Parsons. That's a weird one. Yeah, I guess there were a lot of Parsons, but I don't know. That's a new one to me. What turn at Charlotte Motor Speedway can Humpy Wheeler see from his office? It's ready to say slap shoes strikes again. Yeah, there you go. What turn at Charlotte Motor Speedway can Humpy Wheeler see from his office? This is a little bit, we got fewer options on this one, that's for sure. We got 4 and 2 and 3 and 1. We got all the options here. Go ahead and get your votes in here, and we'll wrap up here for tonight. What turn at Charlotte Motor Speedway can Humpy Wheeler see from his office? Turn 9 on the Roval. I like the way you think, R.D. Fox. There you go. All right, here we go. And the answer is turn 3. Turn 3 is the correct answer. Joey Fairbanks, you got it, man. I think were you the only one who gets 3? Wow. How about that? Turn 3 is the correct answer. Well, there you go, man. Well, kudos to you. Alrighty, folks. Well, that'll do it for the show tonight. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Congratulations to William Byron on his second win of the season. BJ McLeod, unfortunately, his first last-place finish in around 2 years. For him in the number 78 car, the Live Fast Motorsports effort. The article on BJ's last place run will be posted later this evening. Stay tuned for the entry list storylines coming this Thursday. And our next show is going to be after the Bristol Dirt Race on Easter Sunday. So stay tuned for a bit of, an interesting show on that one there too. Not sure exactly what to expect, but hopefully we'll be expecting better weather than we did last year. For sure. But in the meantime, check out lastcar.info is the website, at lastcaronbrock is the Twitter. And if you're interested in some bonus content, patreon.com/lastcaronbrock is the Patreon. So have a great evening, folks. Stay tuned for more content on this channel. I do have that other video that's in the works. And hopefully we'll get some more stuff on here real soon here. So stay tuned for all of that. So have a great evening, everyone, and I will see you next time.